we move on to Dana White, the other prime figure over the past week of coverage. So he showed up today at the media day ahead of Saturday's fight night card. This was unexpected, and he just sat down and immediately addressed the incident of him slapping his wife on New Year's Eve with the video, and opened himself up to questions. This lasted about under 15 minutes, and all of the questions concern the incident and what Dana White is or is not doing about this. I'm going to get this out of the way, that I know that Dana White is maybe the last person anyone wants to throw any accolades towards, but of this entire story, Dana White appears to be one of the few people that ran from the story when it comes to people above him and in concert with him and the UFC's business. I mean, this guy put himself on a dais here. Now you can also look, from the side of this as a media strategy. And don't get me wrong, this was a strategic move as well that does allow for cover. Now, anytime Dana is asked, he can say, I addressed all of this. I addressed this at the press conference. You had your chance to ask your questions there. This is a way that I think he can hopefully get this out of the headlines. But this is somebody that is not offering any excuses, but at the same time also looks like he is not facing any punishment either. His punishment is, I have to live with this for the rest of my life, and people labeling me this, that's the punishment, which in everyday...
Those were his words.
Those were his words. Yep. Yes, that he has to live with this, and that's the punishment. What are you going to do? Send me away for 30 days? That would hurt the company, the employees, and the fighters, not me. I could disappear. It's no problem. But Wei, if you or I were in this scenario, not only would we be labeled this and have to walk with this, but we would also have to be punished on top of it, which is typically how punishment works, is that, yes, you are guilty of something, and there will be a part of you that is going to be tied to something if it's bad enough and egregious enough to the public. But it does not look like he is facing any kind of sanction, any kind of discipline for this, nor are the people that would be administering that punishment saying a word. It's as though they are putting Dana out there to just take it, and that's it.
I think that part of the story is maybe a bit sadder. Dana feels like he's confronting this issue a lot more in the public eye than his bosses are, and that's really unfortunate. I didn't realize he had said something about how you'd be punishing the fighters and not me if he said
if he took a leave from the company, like if he was left for 30 days, he's like, that doesn't hurt me. He's like, that would impact the company negatively.
I'm curious to know specifically what that means.
I think it's his belief, and this very much connects to Vince McMahon. The idea of WWE without Vince McMahon for years was thought to be, well, we need Vince McMahon, and we got the answer to that 6 months without Vince McMahon. The train kept rolling without him, and I think the same would be the case in the UFC.
There is no one person in an organization that big that I think is not expendable. Like, everybody can go away, and the company will continue just as fine as it was. I mean, okay, sure, maybe you'll be a bit disorganized for a period of time, but you cannot tell me that he's so important to the company that he cannot be suspended for 30 days, 60 days, or however long. I don't really understand that particular logic and that particular excuse, but at least he's saying something about it, which is a lot more than you could say for Endeavor. And
I mean, he brought up
ESPN.
the fact. I mean, as the broadcaster, very much so. I mean, you are starting to see more coverage of this on the ESPN side, but in terms of the parent company, like, they just deflected from, we just run this. But if you want to just strictly look at Endeavor, Dana brought up the fact that no one is happy about this, specifically mentioning Ari Emanuel and ESPN. It's like, they're not happy about this, but they're not condemning him. They're not coming out with any kind of stance. And the funny part is, like, Dana White is the one that is not asking for any excuses or trying to deflect blame. He is not trying to come out here and position himself in any way, shape, or form as a victim or anything like that. So to me, it's almost like the silence is the complicity in this, in that, are you or are you not against domestic violence, I think would be a simple statement that we in no way condone this. And sometimes, when you get to the root of a punishment, it is not just the fact that you are hoping that the person who has done wrong is going to learn from it, and this punishment will get them to that understanding of where they went wrong. But it is also a message that in a civil society, we do not operate in a way that does not have checks and balances, that there are not consequences for actions. Dana White, I will take him at his word that he is deeply apologetic for this and ashamed by his actions. At the same time, that does not absolve you from punishment, that sometimes it is Endeavor telling the world that even somebody at this level, it is not okay to strike a woman. And we are making a stance here. It is not about Dana White being financially handicapped by a suspension. It is a statement to everybody that intakes our product that when this happens, we do not condone this. And I'm not going to even the extreme of Dana White needing to be fired, but there are a gigantic gulf between firing Dana and doing nothing, which is where we are at, doing nothing. You can't tell me there is somewhere in between that properly states we as a company do not condone this kind of violence against women. Full stop.
100%. Completely agreed. Yeah, it's at this point now where I feel like this story has gotten a whole lot of attention publicly. So much
quite a bit over this past week, and some of that was fueled by at first it not getting a whole lot of attention. But you are starting to see a lot of larger outlets when Jemele Hill is writing about this. When you have the California Legislative Women's Caucus, which is made up of 17 senators in California, calling for Dana White's removal. I don't know if that is necessarily going to be lead to anything, but nonetheless, this has become a much more significant story than I feel the first 24 to 48 hours when we were talking about it.
Certainly. Yeah. What level does the pressure have to build publicly in order for some action to take place, in order for Power Slap to not just be delayed by a week, but, removed from the schedule outright? I think very much, Endeavor, TBS, these are people that are just basically waiting for the story to die down before they can proceed with business as usual. And I think that would be really unfortunate.
That's going to be the hope. I think that has been the strategy this past week is we put Dana on TMZ and we're just going to ride out the news cycle, let people write their editorials, let MMA media talk about this. And that's, unfortunately, they are going to react to the ones that are the pressure points of a company: stock, sponsors, advertisers, broadcast partners. And thus, that is why those are the people that we look at to stand up in these situations, because they have the power. Because I can rant and rave and write a million articles, but let's be honest, that is not invoking any type of change. It is the people that have those pressure points with the company. And that goes to sponsors of this, which it was brought up to Dana. Has there been any financial damage to this company vis-a-vis sponsorships? And he has said, not that he is aware of, but it's still early. Like maybe. To me, it's deplorable what TBS is doing. They are delaying this a week. The ads were running throughout Dynamite on the US feed tonight. So they are going full-fledged ahead. I think it's an utter embarrassment for that broadcaster to be going with a Power Slap league as Dana White.
Well, they're calling it Dana White's Power Slap, and it was Dana over the advertising.
I did not see the advertising, but
chat room, let us know if you guys saw.
Yeah, please give us the exact wording of that, and if Dana White was part of the advertising, because unfortunately we cannot see that up here in Canada. But also worth noting, nothing within the body of Dynamite as well, which you would think next week will be maybe a closer show to watch if there's any embedded advertising or direct advertising from an Excalibur or Taz on the show as well. But again, those are the areas that, whether it is a Vince McMahon, whether it is a Dana White, those are the people that, the few that have that power that is going to cause these companies to react. When you saw Endeavor stock go down last week, I mean, those are the things they react to. They react to monetary loss of how bad is something. It is determined by our profits and losses and how those are impacted. It is not a weighing of our conscience that comes to how big a controversy is.
The system does not make room for conscience. It's a system based on numbers, and these actions will be dependent on numbers.
Beyond that, I do want to say that, for a lot of times, the MMA media, and I hate the grouping. I hate the grouping of any type, anyone really. I think it's very lazy to ever just paintbrush everybody. But I thought those that were represented at the press conference today, I thought they asked a lot of good questions, from the sponsorships to other females on the roster that have been victims of domestic violence. What will happen to fighters that inevitably we will have fighters on the roster that are part of domestic violence cases? What will happen then? How can you punish fighters after, they're going to have to be labeled as such? Is that enough of a punishment for them? Is that they are known as someone that struck a woman? Anyway, a lot of good questions were brought up. And to my understanding, they did not know ahead of time Dana was coming to media day. So they were reacting in the moment too. So, some applause there that it was not just simply let Dana get his statement out and then we're going to ask him about when Conor's coming back. They continued and asked a lot of questions, and we at least had Dana White having to answer for them. And we will see how open he will be if he is asked about this in the future, or if he's going to deflect to, I did my 10-minute press conference and that was me addressing it. I'm moving on.
Several people in the chat room letting us know that Dana White is not a part of the name. No Dana at all in the advertising. James Robinson here says, just a bunch of macho dudes living together when they're not slapping each other for sport.
Okay, well, that's really important, because the selling of that show was Dana White's name and himself attached to that series. And that's going to be very interesting next week to see how much of Dana is in that show. I don't think you could edit around Dana if he is, figured in prominently as...
Well, let's remember The Ultimate Fighter. Like, yes, Dana was all over, like, introducing the challenges and introducing the fighters and all that. You would presume he's playing a similar role on a show like this. Can they minimize that involvement at all?
We're going to see. I mean, and if the editing process had anything to do with delaying it that week, the fact that they are not advertising Dana attached to the series, I think that's very significant, because that is that's the reason this has a television deal. That's the reason that this show is happening, is because of Dana White. I do not think this series is going to do well at all. I didn't think it was going to be a big hit to begin with, and I think there's going to be a lot of even people like that had curiosity about this show that are going to have a moral stance against watching this show. Like, I will not be tuning into this at all, and I'm wondering how many people out there that were even interested out of curiosity to watch the first episode that would still go ahead and do this next week.
Same, I'm more so just attracted to the story of what TBS would do in this situation, and it seems like they're going ahead, which they must have a lot invested in it all.
Do you see Dana White doing any more media over this next week to promote this series?
It's very possible, John. It seems like, he didn't have to speak to the media today and chose willingly to do so. It fits with his image of a guy who speaks his mind and often says things that, people don't like. But I hope whoever gets the chance to interview him continues to press, the level of consequence that I think might be beyond a label. Some actual, and I
think that there are a lot of questions to come his way, but when it comes to the punishment, it becomes very difficult, because if you are guilty of something and then it's like, okay, well, how should you be punished? It's kind of difficult for you to be in the position as both as the assailant, and you're also now convicting yourself and giving yourself a sentence. Where are the people that are to administer this penalty to Dana White? Where are they in this whole thing?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I would argue sometimes, if people are caught in these sort of situations that are ultimately affecting the brand that they're working for, and affecting the brand that represents not just them, but other people, in other employees, I mean, they would take themselves out to, limit the negative exposure of PR to that brand. I hope
he doesn't call up Vince McMahon. He's like, I'm thinking of stepping away. I got some terrible advice last summer, Dana. That was my big lesson last summer is don't walk away from the fire. You'll be fine. People will get over this kind of thing.
But the questions maybe aren't just for Dana, but for his employers and other partners.
It could be. And I don't look at this as though this is a dead issue. And I think this is going to be something that follows Dana for a long time. And I think it will follow Endeavor too, in the sense that we know there will be another incident in the future. And it's going to come back to, you did not act in this situation when a very prominent power figure in your company was caught on tape. There was no ambiguity about this. It is plain as day. And that video will follow Dana. And I think it will follow Endeavor because of their inaction during this entire thing as well. Do you imagine Vince McMahon holding a similar press conference?
Absolutely not. About his allegations?
Yeah.
I don't think so, dude.
Yeah, probably not.